Let's talk about our friend Keir again. He's over in Germany. He's then heading to France, where, frankly, he is betraying Brexit. He's trying to negotiate a trade deal with Germany, that well-known economic powerhouse. In other words, it's an economic basket case just on the brink of serious recession. So why do we need trade deals with it anyway? You might as well make trade deals with Chad or Haiti. And then he's off to France to do the same thing. What he's trying to do, it's clear to me, is to get us back into the single market. In other words, in all but name, get us back into the EU. And he says, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reset our relationship with Europe. Keir, we took that once-in-a-generation opportunity in the year 2016 when we voted to leave Brussels. That was our opportunity, and you better not betray it, but he is betraying it, isn't he?
Oh, 100%. You know, it was very clear they would go down this route. Of course, they said all the things that they knew they had to say in the run-up to the election, which was, no, we're not going to rejoin the single market. No, we're not going to try and unravel Brexit. No, we're not going to bring back free movement of people. No, we're not going into the customs union, etc., etc. They knew they had to say that. Otherwise, all hell would have broken loose. Why? Because the majority of people who voted for Brexit still believe that Brexit was a good idea and should still be done properly. And what they're unravelling here isn't actually something that's ever been done properly. So it's not as if they are reversing a lot of opportunities that have been made the most of by the last government. And I think people will still be rightly very, very dubious about this route that we're going down, because all the reasons that people voted for Brexit in the first place still stand today. The majority of people, I think, still want to be able to control our borders, and they still have grave doubts about being controlled by Brussels. So this is a sovereignty thing. It is also about immigration, and people don't want to see, I don't think, any backtracking on that. Of course, there is a minority of voters in this country that have never accepted Brexit and have always been hell-bent on reversing it and see literally everything that's wrong in the UK today through that prism. And we all know these bores. You come across them all the time, and it's all about Brexit and everything, whatever it may be, whether they're stuck in a traffic jam or, you know, they're in a queue at passport, you know, when they go out to their holiday home in Spain, like Lorraine Kelly moaning away earlier this week. That's all down to Brexit and so on and so forth. But look, this was a settled will of the people. And I think the Prime Minister tries to chip away at that at his peril.
Yeah, and don't forget, he is at the head of a cabinet. Every single member of his cabinet voted Remain. And I want to tell the viewers and the listeners to this show, many of whom, nearly all of whom I suspect voted Brexit, I'm sorry, folks, Brexit does not stand a chance. Keir Starmer is a MANIC Remainer, and he's going to get us back into that club in all but name. For all we know, he'll just get us to rejoin. I mean, it's a disaster, isn't it, Isabel?
It really is a disaster, or rather a disaster in the making. And crucially, because it's such a lost opportunity. You know, we really do have still the framework now within which we can be so much better than our European neighbours. There's nothing to envy, as you were pointing out, in how the economies of France and Germany are doing and how the rest of the Eurozone's doing. Europe, the Eurozone is a basket case. I mean, the UK is hardly forging ahead with this brilliantly booming economy, but we are actually doing better than some of the biggest economies in the Eurozone. So it seems quite bizarre to wish to go back into that with all the problems that that brings. Of course, there's lots that we should be doing better about Brexit, partly because the last government never actually got round to doing anything much positive with it. But that opportunity is still there. By the way, Kevin, while we've been there, there's been another widely reported now, another case of a fatal stabbing in London. And I think that our listeners would like to know about that. As I say, widely reported, although details not confirmed by Talk. But we're talking about here the victim being a man in his 30s who was wheelchair bound.
Oh,
get that.
My God.
So a wheelchair bound man in his 30s has been stabbed to death in London today in broad daylight at 3:38 p.m.
Well, thank you for that breaking news. I should have known that myself, but that is a terrible thing. We'll have a look into that to see if we can get some more on that. I wonder what the details are, but the wheelchair aspect seems rather alarming. Also, still with Starmer's trip to Europe, apparently this is the fifth time since he became Prime Minister that he sat down with Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor. So something is going on there. The likely price for any kind of trade deal we do with Germany and or France will be we'll have to open our borders to their people if they want to come and live here. So there you go. Our borders begin to be eroded. We become a de facto member of the EU again. And what do you think that Starmer, when he headed to Berlin, meant, Isabel, when he said it's time we can turn a corner on Brexit? My translation is we can reverse Brexit.
Yeah, what he meant is we can consign Brexit to the bin in all but name. We'll pretend that we're still independent, but we're just going to basically erode everything. And on the free movement thing, we know that they've been sort of flying a kite about the idea of allowing young people to come to the UK in a reciprocal agreement for up to 3 years to basically take advantage of some of the freedoms that were there pre-Brexit to go and live and work in another country. And I actually, initially, I was kind of instinctively in favour of this. I like this idea, but I think the issue with it is actually the length of time that they're proposing. I think a year would work pretty well. But once you've got into 3 years, what you're going to find is an awful lot of those people who come to take advantage of that scheme effectively just melt away into our society and never return from whence they came. And that's not only a numbers issue, but is also an issue in terms of depressing wages for British workers. So I'm just really saying that, having reflected on it, I'm not sure I was right to be quite so enthusiastic. I still like the idea, but I think 3 years feels far too long. We've already got 3 years, of course, for those who want to come over and study at our universities, and there are arguments about whether or not that's quite widely abused already.
Well, if anybody on the continent does fancy coming to Britain to live, don't use the official routes. If I was you, I'd get yourself into a small boat, come across the channel and claim asylum. Then you can stay forever. So that's probably the most efficient way to get residency in Britain. We'll be dealing with the latest invasion. Yesterday, something like 580 more came across the channel. So that situation continues apace. And going back to your terrible wheelchair stabbing story, yeah, you're right. A man in his 30s in a wheelchair stabbed to death in a London street in broad daylight. Air ambulance crew battles in vain to save him, and the police have arrested 2 people. So another day on the carnage, blood-stained streets of London under the auspices of our wonderful mayor, London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who thinks clean air is far more important than people getting stabbed to death. Really great stuff, isn't it?